So anyone who owns real estate and their goal is to avoid probate, then we have to start looking at trusts and setting them up, because that essentially is what's going to avoid probate.
Why do people want to avoid probate? Why is that so important?
So if the goal is to make things as easy as possible for your family, then obviously having the court involved is not always the best route to go. Sometimes people have owned homes for, 60 years.
Right.
They're very unfamiliar with the process of selling real estate or downsizing, or even the value of the real estate.
In general, sure.
Yeah, they definitely need a real estate professional to kind of consult with and walk them through their options and what that would look like for them.
Welcome back to the podcast. One of the greatest privileges in my business is being able to connect the people that I care about the most. My clients, my friends, my family, with professionals that I trust deeply. Today's guest is someone who has done estate planning for many years, and for many of my clients over the years, and even for my own family. And there is no stronger endorsement that I can give than that. Kelly Longton is an estate planning and probate attorney who helps families think clearly and proactively and responsibly about protecting what they've built, whether it be wills, trusts, powers of attorney, incapacity, probate guidance even, asset protection. She sees families before the crisis and unfortunately sometimes after the crisis, and helps them bring clarity to very emotional situations. So looking forward to joining Kelly today with this.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly, for joining us. I would like to ask a few questions of you, if that's okay.
Sure, I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. One of the biggest things as an estate planning attorney, what is one of the biggest misconceptions that families have about estate planning in general?
I don't think it's just one misconception. I think there's many misconceptions.
Let's cover them then.
So I think I can narrow it down to about 4 of the most popular misconceptions.
Okay.
The first is, I don't have an estate, so I don't need an estate plan. But everyone has an estate. So whether it's $10,000, whether it's $1 million, everyone has an estate. Sometimes people just don't realize what their estate consists of.
Okay.
So it's their real estate, their bank accounts, their investment accounts, all their retirement accounts, all of those proceeds from life insurance, and then all of those little knickknacks and personal property that they have at home. So everyone has an estate.
Got it. So you don't have to own multiple pieces of property in order to have an estate. Is that right?
No, we all have one.
Right.
Some small,
Okay.
some big.
Got it.
Right?
Super.
Another misconception that people have is, when I pass away, everything's going to go to my spouse. So I don't need a plan.
Got it.
Well, that's not always true, especially in blended families. So that's another misconception that people have, because if you don't have a plan in place, your estate will be distributed under state statute. So that might not coincide with what your actual intent is as far as that estate plan goes.
Got it. Okay.
Another thing is, if I have a will, then my family doesn't have to go through probate. I hear that one all the time.
Right.
It's a huge misconception that people have when it comes to their estate plan. Whether you have no will or you have a will, that guarantees the probate process. So no will at all, like I just mentioned a moment ago, then your estate would be distributed under state statute, which again may or may not be the way that you actually want. And if you have a will in place, it just essentially serves as a set of instructions to the probate judge on what you actually want done with your assets when you pass away. But it still has to go through probate. It's still the same process, just having a set of instructions available. And then one of the other ones I hear, it doesn't necessarily have to do with death. It's incapacity. So a lot of times people are thinking of estate planning just as what happens when you pass away. But true estate planning deals with post-death, but also incapacity issues. So what I hear is, I'm married, so my spouse will just be able to do that. Or my oldest daughter already knows that she's making medical decisions. But without proper legal documents in place, that's not going to happen. Your family's going to end up in court having somebody appointed to actually make these legal and medical decisions for you.
So perhaps an example of that might be a spouse that had a stroke
For
or
sure.
a car accident
For sure.
or things like that.
Yeah. So, none of us know when something's going to happen.
Right. And that's the point,
It
right?
could definitely
Yeah.
be a car accident.
Yeah.
Right. And, you're saying, okay, I want my daughter to make decisions, but you might also have 3 other children who want to make decisions as well.
Right.
So
Gotcha.
really important to make sure
Great.
that you have those documents in place ahead of time.
Right. Well, that brings me to my next question. When should you really start thinking about wills and trusts and setting up that estate plan?
I feel like that's a little bit of a trick question.
All right. That's why I got you here.
So most people do estate planning once or twice in their whole lives,
Hmm.
right? Typically, or if they even get around to it, when their kids are young. Right? Oh my gosh, now we have children. We need to appoint a guardian to take care of our children if something happens to us, right? And then as people get older and they start accumulating assets, then they start to get into more thorough estate planning. What I see a lot is even just college age kids, right? You have college age kids, and
Yeah.
mine are post college at this point.
Yeah.
But if something happens to your child at college and they don't have healthcare documents or financial documents in place, you wouldn't even be able to find out if they were okay.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we've run into that. As you know, before doing real estate, I was ran trauma centers, and you legally cannot release information unless those things are in place, like healthcare proxies and ability to release that information to a
Absolutely.
parent. So that's another great reason to get into estate planning early and not wait.
yeah, and I think especially with college age children,
Right.
parents just assume that if something happens to them that they would be able to get information, but that is absolutely not true. And then we also have HIPAA, right?
Right.
So HIPAA ensures that that information is not disclosed.
Disclosed. Right.
So very important at any age to
Right.
just get that plan in place.
Super. I think that's hugely helpful. My next question kind of revolves around real estate. How does real estate typically fit into an estate plan, and how does that affect depending upon what the assets that you have? Maybe a personal home, a vacation home in the mountains or down on the beach.
Real estate fits into an estate plan in many ways. For most people, their biggest concern is to avoid probate when they pass away. So anyone who owns real estate and their goal is to avoid probate, then we have to start looking at trusts and setting them up, because that essentially is what's going to avoid probate. So that's one way that real estate fits in, right?
Okay.
Another way that it fits in is when someone passes away and we're dealing with families post-death administration. So whether the real estate needs to be sold out of a probate estate or out of a trust, that's we're heavily invested in real estate, right? So if it's local property or a foreign property. Another way that it always comes up a lot in estate planning is when clients are looking to downsize and maybe take some of that equity in their house and use that for investment accounts at this point. And they just don't want to have those big properties anymore. So estate planning, like life, is filled with transitions as you go through this. So real estate just happens to be a huge part of it. It's one of Americans' biggest assets.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned just sparks a question in my mind. Why do people want to avoid probate? Why is that so important?
So if the goal is to make things as easy as possible for your family, then obviously having the court involved is not always the best route to go.
Right.
The probate process here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it's statutory requirement that assets can't be distributed for at least 1 year. So if you just have a will or no will at all versus having a trust in place, then you have to wait for that entire probate process to go through. So governed by the court every step of the way. So it can be a really frustrating experience. It's expensive. It's extremely time consuming. So the statutory requirement is 1 year, but in all actuality, looking at about a year and a half to 2. It's a little bit shorter in New Hampshire. I practice in both states. The statutory requirement in New Hampshire is 6 months. But again, when it's all said and done, because you're waiting on the court for every step of this process, you're looking at about a year, year and a half. So that's a long time for assets.
Sure is. And one other thing that I remember you having a conversation with me about involved disclosure of information if it goes to probate. How, I'm a very private person. I don't necessarily want that information out, but tell me a little bit more about why in probate that information is actually out in the public
Sure.
space.
So the whole process of probate is public record, right? It's a court filing, right?
Right.
Court filing is a public record. So I can literally go in and see anyone's probate file. I can see the assets they owned. I can see the actual will if they had one. It's public record. I can see who the beneficiaries are. I can see who's included, who's been excluded, right? So if being private or not, inviting maybe some disgruntled heirs out, which they do look up the cases in the probate court. We get calls all the time from people who might be on a little bit of a fishing expedition. So if privacy is important to you and you want to make sure that you pass your estate on to your loved ones without having interference from others, then you definitely would want to lean towards trust planning.
Trust planning. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. What are some of the common mistakes you see when planning is delayed or isn't fully complete? It's incomplete.
Yeah, I think the sad thing from our point of view is when a tragedy strikes and there hasn't been any estate plan put in place. Dealing with that is, a completely different experience than if somebody has planned ahead. And twofold. One is incapacity and one is death. So the incapacity issue, which again, a lot of people don't think of estate planning, they don't think of incapacity issues. They think of death, right? So whenever you're talking to someone, they're like, oh, I have a will, so my kids will get everything. Well, what happens if you become incapacitated? So that's where you see the bigger issues, in my opinion, which is your financial power of attorney. So if you're alive but unable to manage your own finances.
Who's going to do that?
Who's going to do it, right? Yeah. Because financial institutions aren't going to allow anyone to do that unless you have an actual power of attorney in place. Same thing with your medical decisions, which we touched upon just a few moments ago. But without these documents in place, now your family is going through a conservatorship process, a guardianship process. Those processes are long. They're time consuming. They're expensive. During COVID, we saw houses getting foreclosed on. Because they didn't have financial powers of attorney in place. So that's the sad part of looking at that, because it easily could have been avoided if it had been addressed, and it would have been a quick and easy process. So that's the incapacity issue. The post-death issue, it's really the same thing, right? If they don't have a plan in place at all, then that's just a free-for-all through the probate process. If they have maybe a will, but their misconception was that they wanted to avoid probate, they just didn't meet that intent. So now their kids like, I thought we didn't have to go through probate, but now they're enduring this long, year and a half, 2-year process, which again, if that intent had been met, would have been a quick and easy administration for the family.
Got it. So you mentioned, it takes a year. And is that because of creditors needing to have access to that account?
Yes. Not access,
but
so in
ability
the
to file?
Commonwealth of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, those statutory timeframes are so creditors can put a claim in against the estate. So in Massachusetts, they give them quite a long time. So a year for them to come forward and put a claim in against the estate. If they properly perfect that claim, then they are first in line to get paid.
Interesting. Before anyone else gets paid out, before houses get sold and...
Yep. And the interesting thing is creditors can only attach assets that go through probate.
So my next question would be, how do you collaborate with real estate professionals like us during those transitions?
We routinely refer our clients to real estate professionals that we know and trust to help them with different issues. Sometimes it's they want to maybe help a child purchase a property, right? They want to help them while they're alive rather than waiting to pass something on. A lot of times it's maybe they want to downsize, which is becoming more and more. Well, there's all these 55 communities, which seem to be fitting for a lot of people as they downsize and they just don't want the hassle of it all, right? And I think another component is definitely the probate and trust administration process. Sometimes people have owned homes for, 60 years. Right? They're very unfamiliar with the process of selling real estate or downsizing, or even the value of the real estate. In general, sure. Yeah, they definitely need a real estate professional to kind of consult with and walk them through their options and what that would look like for them.
Thank you for that. One piece of advice every family member should hear before a crisis shows up.
Make a plan now.
Got it.
None of us know when that bell is going to ring or the tragedy is going to strike. And, people will ask, at what age? When should I do this? I'm not old enough yet. Well, funeral homes are filled with services for people that aren't old enough yet or that weren't expecting death. We all know someone who's suddenly passed away. So it's very important that stop putting it off. Just make a plan. Estate plans are transitional, just like life is.
Mm-hmm.
So if the original plan you put in place, you can always revisit, you can always update it, you can always change it. If you have a falling out with someone, you're not stuck with that estate plan, but having one in place is most definitely better than not having anything.
Absolutely. One of the things that we do, since we've actually gone through you to do our trust, is that we have regular updates. And tell me a little bit more about your service. Doesn't stop as soon as the documents are complete, and it's really not about the documents anyway, right?
So for our law firm, we're not a transactional law firm. That's not the way that our business is structured. That is not how we want to operate as an estate planning attorney or counselor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't charge for meetings or phone calls. We do annual review meetings with our clients. We like to touch base because, like I said, life is transitional.
Mm-hmm.
Things happen. Children pass away, grandchildren are born, falling out of family members happen on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
Accumulate new assets, get rid of assets. So it's really, really important that you are working with somebody who's not looking just to prepare the documents and never see you again, because that's just not how life is, and that's not how your estate plan should be either.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that. So conversations like this are exactly why we do this series, is particularly to be able to go to professionals like Kelly and Kelly Longton Law, because estate planning isn't about the documents, like we said. It's about protecting families, and that's what you're in the business of doing. And it's about preventing conflict. It's about creating clarity in moments that really can be hugely emotional. And it takes, if you take one thing away from it, it's don't wait for a crisis to show up. Let's do it now. Thank you, Kelly, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And appreciate it. Looking forward to continue to do business with you and protect our clients, our friends, and our family.
Thank you. I love being a resource for your clients and families in general.
Well, thanks, Kelly.